Here it shakes. Did you notice that?
No, I did not.
And welcome to the Midday Show. Mark ready as always as he reaches in. You know what's funny? Oh, I do have a drink. I panicked for a second. I saw you go to get yours, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I have one, but I do.
What? Right when you started the drum roll, that's when I was like, ugh, I'm behind. So anyway, yeah, I'm good now.
Welcome to the Midday Show. A plethora of topics. We don't really have like a set number of topics today. There are a couple of things. I sent you a link about blackouts. I want to talk about summer blackouts. They're predicting that this might be the worst ever for power outages and different things like that, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country and across the world. I'm an SNL fan. I don't know if you saw the huge cast shakeup at all. Did you see this?
An SNL fan?
Saturday Night Live.
Did you say SNL?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't hear what you said. I thought you said FNL, and I was like, I don't know what FNL is, but I know what SNL is. So
I'm a huge FNL fan too. Friday Night Lights. I love Friday.
See, I couldn't put it together, but yeah, okay, SNL. Go
and
on.
Then there's some other things here. There's some Bezos stuff, some Biden, the Depp Heard. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on from the weekend, and I didn't even touch on sports yet. So we're going to jump around. If you have questions today, leave them for us. We honestly will be happy to discuss them. Before we get to all
I know about that. We might discuss it. I'm not sure we'll be happy.
I'm happy to discuss them. Leave them. I'm looking for the fodder. Leave them for me. Before we get to that, Mark, the most important question of every day: how are you feeling?
I am good.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you, this is my quick topic. Over the weekend, I got together with college buddies who see, you're weird because you're like, your friend group is so weird that you knew once you left high school and you went to college, no one else would like you. So all your friends just kind of stuck together and continued to like each other because your lifelong, your college friend group is like a whole life friend group. I have friends from college that we had 8 guys in one house. 5 of us got together on Friday night. One of them had to leave. A new one came in. 5 of us got together Saturday. The one we hadn't seen in 19 years. We hadn't seen since the one dude's wedding. And it is incredible whenever you get people like this together who spent a significant amount of time together at some point in their lives, how immediate it just revolves back and it becomes natural, and it's the same jokes and the same stories and the same conversations. I've always, however much things change, people, we didn't have kids and now they have kids in college and, stuff like that. And it's like the whole world has changed. And within 10 minutes, it's like you just saw them yesterday. And it is one of the fascinating things about friendships that, I think during the pandemic, I think one of the positives that has come out of it is that we just don't have, we realize the freedoms we're losing for multiple reasons. And I think people are doing stuff like this more now on the backside. And maybe because they were bored and could sit home and plan it. Or maybe I'm just kind of at the age where we got kids that their kids are all in college and we're empty nesting. But I'm not an empty nester yet, but some of them are and some of them are getting there. But it is, I think this is one of the results of the pandemic that people are getting together more with people because they went a long time and couldn't see them even if they wanted to.
So what did you guys because I'm not quite there yet. Like when we get together, there is no like 10-year gap. There's no like, oh, I haven't seen so-and-so in so long. Like, what do you even do when you haven't seen somebody for 18 years?
Well, we met at a casino in the Poconos because it was, we have guys in Connecticut, guys in Jersey, guys in Delaware, guys in Pennsylvania. It was centralized. And it was a really nice place. And I had to leave in the middle of Saturday. I had to leave and come back because I had a family obligation. But they just sat around and talked. Talked, ate, and drank is kind of what their day was. But I don't know, like, if there's what there is around. It's not like they're in Vegas or in Atlantic City or, now
that's fair.
There's the sports book downstairs. They could have gone downstairs and watched all kinds of, NBA playoffs and baseball and horse racing and all that stuff. But it was just, it's funny how the old stories just because it's like watching a movie you haven't watched in 10 years and it was funny and you put it in and it's still funny, even though you already you heard the jokes once. The stories are still good. They're sometimes they're even better.
Oh, well, I'm happy for you. That's good for you.
It was good. And now like we're also, because we're all 50 now, so we're like, all right, we're making plans for next year. Like this should be an annual event, and so people can put it on their calendar. And when you got 8, and like there's just you're throwing out dates, and you're like, does this work? And a couple of them are tax accountants, so obviously the early part of the year is a mess. And then you're just trying to figure out. I'm coaching basketball in the winter. One of them coaches football, so. But it is, with the ease of technology, now that we're on a group chat again and we're texting each other, it's something that more people should do more often, because it is fun.
Yeah, no, it makes it easier. My weekend was great. Thanks for asking. I actually did something that you would have appreciated. I saw my first ever, because I've been to, like, if I went back through and thought about it, I've probably been to like 50 professional baseball games. Like I'm like inching my way up more and more often. I saw my first ever in person inside the park home run Saturday night by the Pittsburgh Pirates.
You know what? Because you texted me when that happened. I'm trying to think if I ever saw one in person.
Yeah.
Because Camden Yards is a little ballpark. It's not a great.
Right.
I remember my brother gave one up. But it was on the road because I was watching on TV, because the outfielder misplayed it and smashed into the wall and got hurt. So he was laying on the warning track while the dude was running around the bases. And, of course, me being the humanitarian, I'm screaming at the left fielder, like, why did you run into the wall? It's a double. Just play it into a double. You took a double and played into a home run, you moron. So, anyway, I don't know if I ever saw one in person.
Here was my kind of like observation about it. I'm not a huge baseball guy. You are, and I think you'll appreciate this. All the games that I've ever gone to, I've always said the thing about baseball is like the moments are so short-lived. So like if someone hits a home run, the ball's in the air for 5 seconds, and then like the home run's done and everyone cheers, but like the play itself is over. Like very rarely does something extend past like 5 seconds in baseball. It was really cool to see an entire stadium engaged in like a 20-25 second like moment where it was like for 20 seconds, everyone was actually engaged in something happening on the field at the same time.
So what happened? He hit it off the fence and took a big hop off the fence?
Over the outfielder's head. He went to track it and then just was over top of him, and it hit the wall perfectly. Scattled back the way that the fielder had came from, and it wasn't even in the infield when the guy was sliding into home. I mean, it wasn't even close. The guy hadn't even touched third yet, and I mean, it was obvious he was getting there.
The way inside the Parkers happen is outfielder collisions, or a dude runs into the wall and gets hurt, or like a guy goes back and hits the wall and then rolls. Sometimes if it hits off the wall, I've seen them where it hit the fence and then deflected off a guy and went rolling upside, and then it went sideways and rolled along the warning track, and he had to go chase it down, and it's like a golf ball rolling down the cart path. So, they are a little fluky, but that's cool. That's cool. I don't know if I ever saw one live. I don't think I did.
It was really neat. So here's like another life thing for you too, since we're rambling about our weekends, and since you never asked me about mine. So I went to Pittsburgh.
Hold on. Let me see, because I don't need to ask because I use my context clues. You were at a baseball game in Pittsburgh, which is a gorgeous stadium, and you saw it inside the park. You saw a historic event. So your weekend was great.
So this is how quickly, like, this is the roller coaster of life. And as I get older, I find myself on the roller coaster more often than when I was younger. So,
and this is from a guy who gets sick on roller coasters.
Correct. So we drive out to Pittsburgh. First, we did like this company party at Knoebels for my girlfriend. It was great. Thank you to GBS.
Was it?
It was good. It went incredibly well. Yes. We can talk about that too if you want to, about my.
No, I'm just joking.
Okay. So it went well. Was there for like 3 or 4 hours at Knoebels, which that's a whole. We should talk about Knoebels at some point. And then We did the trip to Pittsburgh right from Knoebels, had a great ride. Everything was great. Weather was great. I dropped off my girlfriend for a birthday party with her friends. I went to PNC Park by myself. I parked. I did a lap around the stadium because I'd never really like walked around PNC before. Unbelievable. Like went down towards the river, talked to people that had their chairs set up with their radios and their nets trying to wait for a home run. I walked back up to PNC. I ended up getting the cheapest ticket I could because I knew I wasn't going to sit because now all these stadiums have like the tabletops around the lower decks and stuff like that. So I walked to the PNC, got myself a beverage, walked up to like the countertop, and every single person that I kept running into people that wanted to talk. It was fantastic being there by myself. And I kept running into people who knew, like I actually met somebody who knew where Blossburg was at a Pittsburgh Pirates game, which was great. I don't think they are. So anyway, so now it's like 9:45. I got to see an inside the park home run. And as I'm leaving the stadium, I did have one of those moments where like, how great is life? Like, I do remember thinking to myself, like, how lucky am I? Like, how fortunate am I? Like, this was great. Can't believe this worked out the way it did. And then as I'm walking out the stadium, I got a phone call because we were there for a basketball tournament on Sunday. I got a phone call about a player not being able to come. So now I was short a kid. I get to my car. I had a ticket, which a ticket in Pittsburgh, I found out, is significantly worse than getting a ticket in North Central PA.
They have things called parking lots.
Yeah. And then later I got a picture, our storage room, which is kind of like our basement here at the house we just got. Water was starting to come in. And we weren't sure why. So that all happened within like an hour of itself. So I went from like cloud 9 on my way out of the stadium to within an hour, I was like, what is this thing called life? What is the point? Like just complete. So just that roller coaster of the weekend. Then the tournament went fine and everything's great. But, you know, just the aspects of life and how quickly you can just be sky high and then it just immediately turns on you.
You know, I don't know if I mentioned this, but when my daughter goes to Pitt during her last final was like from noon to 2. And I went to the Pirates had a 12:35 start. So I went to the Pirates game while she was there. And I was like, just text me when you're done and we'll come back and get packed up. And a guy gave me a ticket because he had an extra ticket. And I was standing outside and he could tell. He's like, do you need one? We have 4 of them. And he went in and we're shooting the breeze. And he asked where I was from. And I told him I was from like right outside of Williamsport. And he goes, I used to work in Middleburg. And I was like, you worked in Middleburg? He goes, yeah. He goes, I lived over in Winfield, but I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it is crazy how small the world can be.
Really, really, really is. Do you want to dive into, like, you want to just bounce around some trending topics here? How do you want to do this today?
Well, I mean, the things I did not see a second of the Preakness. I still haven't. I didn't know that there's a tail wagging behind you. That the horse. I did hear this story, and I don't know if this is true. My nephew told me this story. The horse that won the Derby, Rich Strike, is that what it was called?
I believe
Rich
so.
Something. 79-1. He had read a story somewhere that some guy, whose name was Rich, had just passed away. I don't know if he was a horse racing guy. I don't know if he's a sports guy or a gambling guy or whatever, but that his funeral was like within days of the Derby, and that all his friends said, in honor of Rich, we're betting on this horse named Rich Strike. And so this whole group of his friends, whether they threw $2, $5, $10, $100, whatever, this whole group of people bet on this horse that was 79-1 as a tribute to their buddy, and they all won. So anyway, if you didn't see the end of the PGA Championship, if you're not a golf person, like this guy, he was from Chile. The top 4 guys going into the final round had not only never won a major, they'd never won a PGA tournament. So somebody, unless they come from distance, and all these guys are falling apart. They look nervous. They're hitting it like it looked like you and I playing. They're hitting it all over the place. And the one guy, he had a 1-stroke lead going into the 18th hole. He needed to make par to win, bogey to get in the playoff, and he hit his drive in the water. And the commentators were just like, what is he doing? Why? It was down. There's a creek down the right side. He's like, just hit something safe, hit an iron, hit a 3-wood. And I guess my nephew told me this too. They interviewed him afterwards, and he's like, I wasn't really thinking about it. I kind of forgot there was water down there. And you're just like, oh my, I mean, and it is when people talk about athletes and they talk about the mental, and people always think that it's like adrenaline. And they always, no matter how tired I am, no matter how hurt I am, I could always fight through and I can persevere. And sometimes the mental is just the ability to stay calm, the ability to stay rational through all, through thick and thin. Like I tell people with their kids, and if you're a baseball pitcher, I don't care how hard your kid throws. I don't care how good his curveball is. Like we'll find when it's first and third, nobody out. Now we'll find out if your kid can pitch, because is he just trying to throw it a million miles an hour, or can he stay within himself and think like, okay, I'm probably going to give up a run. I got to limit the damage and we got to get out of this. And there's so much in sports. There's so much in life about limiting the damage. Like this didn't go the way I wanted, but let's just limit the damage and get out of this. And, you win a major, and I don't want to say your life is set, but oh my gosh, his life's set. And anyway, it was kind of sad and whatever at the same time. So that was the agony and the ecstasy of golf. And golf is one of the great meltdown sports, I would say. Like we saw it happens, like the Phillies blew like a 7-run lead against the Mets the other day. Like we see, you'll see an NBA team that all of a sudden they were up 24 points and now it's tied. So you see this stuff happen. But golf is kind of you can almost see the wheels coming off and it is theater at its best. Sometimes golf is boring as can be, and sometimes it is theatrical as all get out. And yesterday was one of them.
I saw Tiger Woods bounced. He cut himself.
Yeah, he made the cut. He did well on Friday to make the weekend, and then I guess he shot 79. When you see clips of him walking, there is a hitch in his giddy up. And so I don't know what the pain, if he'd have been, I would bet that if he would have been somewhere in contention, he would have Advilled up or whatever he had to do and get through it. But once, if you're in pain and you're, 30 shots off the lead or whatever, he wasn't that bad, but so yeah. So it was a good accomplishment for him to make the weekend, and then it went bad.
Yeah. Do you want to, I don't know, we have some comments here. We've got some stuff. Anything else from the news that caught you before I start diving through some of this stuff?
I was going to say if there was anything political.
Well, Biden came out.
I guess the Oz McCormick stuff, it's going to a recount because that's what the law says, because it's so close that anything that close is going. I just heard, I texted Jamie Flick. We talked about him being on this week on the show, and we're trying to figure out a day. They just said to me here that local election, and he's in the 84th or the 83rd. I can never keep it straight.
I'll have to look.
Whichever one he's in, that his challenger is not conceded yet. So apparently I don't know when that one gets, but he won by 500 votes, which in a national election is nothing, but in a local election when there's only however many cast, but yeah. So I guess we still have election, not fallout, but kind of drag out that's going on here in the big races locally and statewide.
Interesting. Biden came out earlier today too. He said the U.S. is vowing to protect Taiwan if China invades, which the timing's a little interesting. The other aspect of that too is how we were very foot in the ground about Russia and about not putting boots on the ground in Russia and just kind of our involvement with NATO. But this is like a different tone setting for sure. The idea of not. So I just came across that as well. I don't know if you saw that. I didn't
see that, but I did see the reports out of Russia, which are all speculated and leaked or however. There's no confirmation, but it sounds like Putin is in bad health.
Yeah, that is I hate calling it a rumor because I'm sure some of them are more official.
Substantiated, yes.
Yeah, but that's been from the get-go of this. I think that was a lot of opinion pieces that I was reading and like political people that I trust. They were saying they felt like that was a big motivator as to why it was now. Like why. Obviously, I'm sure Russia probably
Wow.
felt like coming out of the pandemic and just kind of economies are weaker and all that stuff. But I think a lot of people were kind of saying like this is kind of Putin's last chance to put his
Huh.
stamp on his legacy.
That makes sense. There was a
Yeah.
line. Did you ever watch The Tudors?
No, but I've heard of it.
Okay. It was a mini series. It might have been an HBO. This was probably 10 years ago. It was before, it was basically a Netflix series before there were Netflix series. And it was around for like 4 seasons. And there was a point at the end, Henry VIII invaded France. And they said he was talking to like his best friend. And he said something about, what are we actually doing here? And he said, we're chasing our youth. And it was we don't really need to fight with France. But when we were young, this is what we did. And it made us feel tough and strong. And here we are now that we're old and we're trying to make us feel tough and strong again. So, that is, I'd never heard that before. But when you put the two together, it certainly makes sense. This is his last stand.
Yeah, essentially just the idea of like if I were to die tomorrow, what would it mean? What would my legacy be? What would it mean to Russia? And so trying to claim some of Ukraine back, certainly in his mind, I'm sure would help his legacy and would kind of.
And you can imagine. Now we're obviously Russian history experts.
Sure,
but
sure.
What the way they run and the way Putin is I can't picture that there's a backup plan because the article I was reading, it's like the Kremlin is a mess, and that he did not leave a chain of succession or whatever it is. If he's gone or if he is incapacitated or not even in the position to be making good decisions, where do they go from there? So, and is it me or is for all governing bodies, there's the White House, there's the palace, there's the Kremlin. Doesn't it just sound, maybe it's because it sounds like Gremlin, it just doesn't really have the same ring to it, does it? Am I wrong?
Well, no, you're not wrong at all. I mean, but the funny thing is it kind of works for them. It kind of fits. Because the Kremlin, they're policing themselves in a way. That's right. And I'm not implying that the U.S. doesn't have. I'm not implying that the U.S. and these other countries don't spy on themselves. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying they're not looking at their own citizens or they're not watching from afar. But the Kremlin was always very, very open about it. If you ever watch documentaries or if you ever read about it, the Kremlin wanted you to know they were watching you. And it didn't matter that you were a Russian citizen, they were out to, and essentially it was the glass eye looking in on you. And so I don't know.
Hey,
I just finished. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go. No, you just finished.
For anyone who's never seen it, there is there's a limited series on HBO called Chernobyl. And it literally starts from the beginning of the nuclear explosion and goes all the way through to the trial at the end. And one of the things that the show does a really good job, it's only 5 episodes, but one of the things that it does is you get a good sense for not what the Kremlin is, but you got a really good sense for what the citizens of Russia think of the Kremlin.
Okay.
So not necessarily how 2 Americans watching the show think of them, but if you were somebody that was working for the Russian government at the time of the Chernobyl explosion, this is how the Kremlin treated you. And you kind of always had one eye over your shoulder and you knew you couldn't say the wrong things. And the show did a very, very good job with that. So no, what you're saying about the Kremlin is the name certainly, the aura that the name gives certainly fits compared to other names of establishments.
I don't know if you saw this, and I didn't see it. One of my buddies showed me this weekend. Have you seen the story about this is back from the 70s, the linebacker at Penn State who was the serial rapist?
No.
It is incredible. Obviously, after the Sandusky thing, that the Penn State football took a huge hit. This happened back in the 70s, and there's a lot of the same topics. There's governmental issues that came out, and I read a lot of it. I want to say it was on ESPN magazine or ESPN.com, but he sent it to me. But you can Google it and find out. It was a linebacker from Long Island, was originally where the kid was from. But it continues to paint more and more of that Paterno was, if it was with his football program, like he was in charge of it. The campus police had no say. The local police had little say. That Joe took care of things. And the more and more you get away from it, I know the guy was kind of deified, but that it was, he was kind of deified around here because he was local and they won, but he was always this guy that always did things right and always did things. And kind of at the end of the day, he looked out for his program first. And I'm sure there's a lot of college coaches who were the same way. And maybe it was bad luck that the things that he ended up covering up were these big sexual assault issues. And I'm not going to say covered up. That's probably unfair. But he certainly, I
think you already said it perfectly. He put the program ahead of everything else.
Yes. So it is. It was just rough. It's a rough article to read, and again, it was from a long time ago. So obviously, one of the things, it's almost 50 years ago. So it's not like the people that are at Penn State now should be held accountable and all this stuff. And it's not a reflection on today's university. I guess it's more of a reflection of the times, and but also in any aspect, especially it happens a lot in college sports, when one person ends up with too much power, and it's a person who shouldn't have that. Like the coaches don't have the university's best interest in mind. They have the program's best interest. They have their own best interest in mind. And it's when one person like that garners so much power that it can be an incredibly dangerous thing when they decide who they're going to protect and who they're not. And then at the end of the day, a lot of people end up looking bad. So if you are interested in that, obviously the Penn State haters will go find it.
Sure.
But even it's just a story that I'd never heard of. And obviously the Sandusky story was nationwide. And this is one that I don't know when it came out, but the guy who did it spent the rest of his life in prison, and he just died recently, like 2019 or 20 or something like that. But so anyway, that's that.
Did you get to see the most recent? Because they did another documentary. I didn't know if you saw that or not. It was just released like a month ago.
I have not seen that one. No.
Okay. I think it was like a E60 piece, but they did like, how most E60s, it's like a 15-minute segment and then they go on to the next. This one, like they did the entire hour-long segment, kind of just like diving back into the whole Paterno era and where they're at now. And they tried to ask Franklin questions kind of about the Paterno legacy, and Franklin just kind of sidestepped them and said, we're here to talk about Illinois, and just kind of,
right.
That's
one you cannot win with.
No, if you're Franklin, I don't even know how let's say you're Franklin and you wanted to answer those questions. I don't even know how you would, even if you wanted to take on the challenge of answering them. Like, I don't know how you win that discussion.
You can't. I don't think, and now that's funny because you mentioned it, and I'll probably think about it tonight. Is there any good, intelligent answer that he can give that somehow he doesn't end up losing? Because there's still the old time Paterno loyalists who think that, he should be on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they talk about in that documentary, and I did not know this, but there's a building in Penn State right in downtown. And I'm blanking on the name of the building. It has a huge restaurant up top, and it's got some shops below. But when they were doing the stonework down below, they put colored tiles for every Paterno win. So What did he end up with? 409?
I think it was 409.
409. So there's 409, and the tiles are the colors of the team that they beat. Okay. So if they beat Michigan State for that win, it's a green tile. And they essentially just did this and didn't tell anybody. And this was and they did this after the I don't even know what word to use, the scandal after the Sandusky happening, and once it came out. So there's this whole dispute of like, you have these people that kind of made this makeshift monument to 409 wins, and no, they didn't tell anybody that they did it, but now everyone knows. It's very clear that this wall represents the 409 wins. And so the question in the documentary kind of asks this, like, is it for Paterno? Is it for the players? Is it for the community? Like, who does the wall represent? What do those wins represent? If you take away the wins, are you hurting the players? Like, and it just kind of led down into all of those questions that I think will be fascinating forever. I know that there were people that had awful things happen to them, but those are questions that I think from a society standpoint are very, very interesting.
No, I'm with you.
Because players won those games, and fans showed up and cheered those players on. And so to act as if those four, the wall doesn't say Paterno. The wall just has 409 colored tiles. And I think for some people that's awful. And I think for some people, they think what a perfect way to represent the wins without having his name mentioned. And so I don't know.
Well, it is. Because you're right. There's this aspect of life where it's like the people, you can't tell the fans that lived it, the players that lived it, the fans that lived it. You can't tell them that, like, I don't want to say their feelings are unjustified. Like, I don't want to say you just can't, like, they were there, they experienced it, and you can't tell them they didn't. And so that becomes this whole, like, I just want it kind of acknowledged that, this is the light, and whether you want to celebrate it or not, and how history remembers it, but, like, don't tell me I wasn't there. Don't tell me I didn't cheer and cry and all those other things. So, yeah, that happens other places way other than sports, but we see it in the NCAA tournament where titles get vacated because of this, and then it's like, well, whether they got vacated or not, you still know who won, and whether the player was ineligible or whatever the case may be. So, and all that doesn't really, you can vacate however many wins you want. The official book can vacate whatever they want. I've never read the official book, but I know how many games he won. So it all gets to the point of now it's just the court of public opinion. So, but the people who rode that wave and loved the wave, and there are a lot of, I think too, that they feel like, all these Penn State people who bled blue and white and had the tickets and watched the games, were at the games and all this stuff. And they're like, I didn't really do anything wrong. I was just a really good, loyal fan. So why? So, like, don't beat me up for this because I didn't do anything wrong. And they're right.
No, I totally agree. It goes. I've said to you, I think 20 years we're going to look back at a lot of these college coaches and think, like, why did we ever build them up? I really do. I think a lot of them, even people that don't have like awful injustices against them or like have ever done anything necessarily like legally wrong. Like, I still think we're going to look back and just be like, why did we ever put their last name ahead of the actual university's name? I just think that 90s, 2000s range of just like, these people were just gods. I think we're just going to be like, what a joke. I really do.
Well, it does. It goes to show like how this is going to insult a lot of people in the viewing audience, which is always what's good. But like, people are so desperate to be associated with a winner. And like, it's one thing to root and have fun rooting, but to excuse or condone anything that anyone does because that's who I root for. We see it politically now. Yeah, they just want to be associated with a winner because it makes them feel like a winner. And in their 9-to-5 life, they just don't have any sort of real competition. They just, and they like the simple wins and losses of what they do. And, we just have this discussion.
I think the media has a lot to do with it. I think the media is to blame because I think if you're a newspaper writer or a beat writer in some of these like college towns, you're not going to get a great quote out of the 19-year-old kid. Like you're going to get a great quote out of the coach. And so you're talking to the coach and you're using their quotes and you're writing these stories and you're trying to sell papers. And so you write these incredible mythological stories and how great these people are. And then the next day, everyone picks up the paper and they read it. And and I don't know. So it's funny how in journalism, everybody's supposed to be held to this higher standard. But in sports journalism, you can build up these coaches without having done any like background. Like you don't know what they do outside of the field, or you don't know, but you can make them seem like they're these great people. And I don't know. The whole college coaching aspect is, I think, going to it already's flipped a little bit, but it's going to be completely different decades from now.
Yeah,
because the journalists don't have the control anymore. Like now it's on Twitter and it's on Facebook, and you can if a coach says something or does something, like it's posted, and it's harder to keep these coaches under wraps for 30, 40 years where it looks like they haven't done anything wrong. And it's harder for these journalists to be able to build these mythological people without the things getting through the cracks, essentially.
Well, and I understand why they do it, because the players come and go so quickly that, people love stability. They love I've gone to the games for years. People root for the same professional sports team for their whole life, and it's the team their dad rooted for and all that stuff. So I do get that as to and
I just want to, and the last thing I'll say, I think they're important. Like, I think it's important to have like a Paterno or a Krzyzewski, or like, I think they're important. I just don't think they're more valuable than anybody else within the program, essentially.
Well, but don't you think what happens is a lot like the Trump world now? Because I saw a show about this, that no one dare, no matter what your stance is on the Republican side, people just feel like they can't come out and criticize Trump as a Republican and have a chance to win. Sure. So don't you think that because what's fascinating about that, and society, history will look back on the Trump era, it would just, it's mesmerizing, some of the things that we're living through right now. But even the people that he didn't endorse are like fake writing his endorsement like McCormick did, because they feel like if they come out, anyone who's not in the Trump party has no chance to win on the GOP side. So isn't it the same in, like, if you're the writer who was in Happy Valley however many years ago and kind of came out and said, listen, like, Paterno might not be as great of a guy as you think. Like, what would have happened to him? Like, right. The mob would have engulfed him. Like, you can't say that and survive. So even the people, I'm sure that there were people who knew. And you talk to people, and every now and then you hear people like, yeah, they work campus security, and if it was a Penn State player, they weren't allowed to arrest him. They had to call Joe. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people who knew lots of these things, but you just couldn't say it.
Yeah.
Just like I'm sure there's lots of Republicans right now that think that that pro-choice should stay, but you can't say it. Like in national polls, it's like 70% of people think that abortion rights and Roe versus Wade should stay in place. And there aren't 70% Democrats. There's a lot of Republicans that think it, but they can't say it, or because they think they'll never win.
There was a poll that they tried to put in place, and it was it asked all these different questions, and essentially it was asking Republicans and Democrats a different series of questions, and they almost all were even, but they were polar opposites. So it was the number of Democrats who weren't willing to say that Biden probably wasn't fit for office. So like there's Democrats out there that do believe like Biden physically cannot maintain and hold the post of the job. And it's the same thing. Like you ask Republicans, like, are you pro-choice? Like, of course, some Republicans are pro-choice, but they're absolutely terrified to say it, just like a Democrat's terrified to say that Biden's not fit for office. And so you go ahead.
I think I was going to say it's the same thing with the Second Amendment. There are lots of Democrats who support the Second Amendment, but you can't say it.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny how this under layer of like of the truth, like that's almost where you're trying to get to in a lot of this stuff. And I do think I give Penn State fans a lot more credit than what they typically get when it comes to this Paterno stuff. I think you have your crazies and your deniers and all of that. But I do think like if you ask the majority of Penn State fans, they are what you said. It's like, listen, I was a loyal fan. Like I supported the team, I supported the kids. But like at the end of the day, I wouldn't have supported this. Like this is not. But what am I supposed to do? Like it came, it went. Like Sandusky's in jail. Like what do you like? Essentially, like a lot of Penn State fans that I've talked to are like, what do you want from me? Like what am I like? Am I supposed to just abandon the Penn State because of something I had no control? Like someone said it to me perfectly. It's like I don't own a Sandusky jersey. I've never met the guy, and I never showed up to the stadium yelling, "Let's go, Jerry." And he goes, I've been going to Penn State games for over 40 years. So like the whole thing is that idea of like, so I'm just not supposed to be a Penn State fan because of that. And there's like, that's insane. So I don't know.
Well, one of the parts from the article, and again, and to your point, there are a lot of fans of anything, whether it's a sports team or a political party, or whatever, who will not give you the company line on everything, who will be honest, who will say, yeah, I know these kids don't go to class and I know this and I know that. But you have these people that are like, all these kids go to class and all these kids study and I'm a fan of this team and we do it right. And part of the article was when this guy was being questioned about, he's being accused of rape of multiple students and they're going through timelines. And the guy, he says to I think it was his roommate. It was at least a teammate. And he goes, we were in study hall that night. And the guy looked at him and goes, we're never in study hall. He goes, no, we're in study hall that night. He goes, dude, we walk in, we sign the sheet, we walk out the back door, and that's what we do. And he goes, but that night we stayed. He goes, but we never stayed. So we didn't stay that night. And that was and it was part of like the story of the guy like going against a teammate and being like, dude, I'm not going to lie for you. And when one of the first times that the guy realized he might be guilty. But then there's the other aspect that like these players have mandatory study hall where they have to walk in and sign a sheet and walk out the back door. So it's I don't know. It's interesting and it's sad and I mean, it's not just like there's legal system issues and it was also, I don't want to say the things that used to get covered up, with social media now, with expanded news, I think politically things are probably, well, I don't want to say more corrupt. I don't know. Maybe we just know about it more. But the whole Me Too movement has kind of changed the world from a sexual abuse and exploitation aspect, and I'm sure that more of these things happened back then than we would care to know.
Oh, sure. I guess the last thing on the Penn State thing, I do think the timing of Paterno, how old he was, how late into his life and career he was, I think what's going to make this linger, because it still is lingering. We could have talked about this for 2 hours. And I think part of the reason that is because there was never the sit down. There was never no one's ever going to know the actual truth. Ever. No one will ever actually know if he covered it up, if he didn't cover it up, how much of a say did he have, how much we're never going to know the exact truth to any of that. And I think because of that, it's only going to make it's going to be very hard for Penn State and Franklin to ever truly walk away from it. It will be 20 years from now, and you could do another documentary, and the ratings would still be ridiculously high because you're never going to have that truth.
And I know you and I are both bigger Franklin fans than a lot of people. But I think Franklin has done well walking away from it. Part of it is because he is so just personality-wise, he's just so different than Paterno. He's a rah-rah guy. He's an energy guy.
Real quick, because I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this, though, because you said walked away from it. I feel like he's dismissed it.
Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of he's not even acknowledged it really.
But see, to me, there's a difference between navigating it and just completely not even and to me, he hasn't really navigated it. He's just kind of said not doing it.
And I think part of it is because he can't win. there's nothing he can say that it is going to win. So, but no, I think that he is. I think it's. I mean, I don't want to say people forgot about it, but I don't think, and maybe they haven't, because I still see SMU football and I think, oh, there's the death penalty. Craig James and Eric Dickerson in the Pony Express. So maybe around the country people see it differently. I don't know, but I don't know. I think Franklin has done a good job, because it's just there's such a positive energy about Franklin, and I know Penn State fans think he doesn't. His in-game strategies aren't good enough, and blah blah blah. They certainly haven't, achieved. They have not become a top 5 program, but they're a top 10, top 15 program consistently. So, yeah. I think I know every fall you and I end up defending Franklin, and we're not like Penn State football fans, but we end up defending him a lot more than most people, because they could do a lot worse at Penn State.
I still think he's one of the best 10 coaches in the country. I honestly, I think when you just look at the package and the recruiting and the way he carries himself and like the way he handles the media, and I find it hard to believe there's 10 people in the country that you would want more than James Franklin. I really do believe that.
And if he gets them over the hump to where they win, one of these years that Ohio State just happens to be down, or whatever case may be that they, he's perfect. He's perfect for the situation if they win. He's outgoing. He's charismatic. He seems like a genuine nice guy. So they just, if he could just attach the wins to it, he is. I'm with you. Yeah. I agree.
Real quick before we go, guys, real talk. Who's winning the Depth versus Herd show? Have you read or listened or seen any of this?
We discussed some of this on the while we were there, and I do not follow it, but I have a real estate coworker who follows it religiously and was playing the highlights. Did she take a dump in the bed?
Yeah, I thought everyone knew that. I guess
I did not know that until this weekend.
There you go. See, I thought everybody knew that.
She got cut from Aquaman 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Her career is over. Her career is finished.
Real quick, anybody who's listening, I'm curious, because maybe I'm completely oblivious as like a white male in North Central PA. To me, is there anybody who honestly thinks this, like Amber Heard could win this? Because everything I read and everything I see and every discussion I have, I can't imagine Amber Heard's pulling this off.
No. And I wonder what this does as a bounce back for him, because he is crushing in the court of public opinion. Yeah,
so when they say who's winning and all this, and again, maybe my algorithm might be different than other people's algorithm, because I'm a white male and I'm flipping through stuff. So my feeds could be very different from somebody else's feed, but I don't see it. I'm failing to see how Amber Heard has any ability to win not only the court of public opinion, but even win in the court of law.
And Pirates of the Caribbean is still a classic movie.
that's what you got for it. Saturday Night Live, by the way. I don't know if you saw, Pete Davidson had his last show. I know you're a huge Pete Davidson fan.
He's done?
He's done. McKinnon is also done. Kate McKinnon.
Why?
This is SNL's a revolving door. What do you mean why?
What are they going to I'm guessing Kate McKinnon's incredibly talented. I'm guessing they have projects that they're walking into.
Kate McKinnon's supposed to be in the Tiger King show. She's playing Carol Baskin in the show. Okay. So, she has things to do.
Okay.
She'll be fine.
Like now with Netflix and Apple TV and all, there's so many other places and Hulu that they can do series and they can do projects. And maybe Pete just wants to, hang out with what's her name all day, Kim.
Pete's gonna be fine. Pete doesn't have anything he's you and I have talked about this. I think he's like A-list. Like I don't even think he's a B-list celebrity anymore. Like I think he's an A-list celebrity.
Dude, he's with Kim Kardashian.
I'm just saying, like,
He
but
has
even
to be.
without, but
Dude,
this is
if
different.
you were dating Kim Kardashian, you would be an A-list celebrity.
But I think even without Kim Kardashian, like he was inching, like I think he was kind of there, like knocking on the door.
I agree. Yeah, there is an absolute lovableness to him that that makes him different, I think.
Well, you know his backstory about his dad died in 9/11.
I knew his dad was in 9/11.
Yeah. And then Lorne Michaels really like stuck his neck out for him, and they became very, very close. And so I think he is. Let's put it this way: most people when they leave SNL, if you say like there will never be someone else like them, it's because of their overall talents. Like like when a Murphy leaves, or like I'm trying to think of like when a Sandberg leaves. Like when these people leave, it's like they're just overly talented, and it's just going to be hard to replace that. Davidson leaving, it's almost like it's almost like the youngest child leaving. Like Davidson was like the little brother of SNL, and it was like, how did Pete get here? And it's like, I don't know, Lauren loves him. Like he's just going to be here. Maybe he'll write a skit or two. And now, like a decade plus later, like he is literally the first person you think of when you think of Saturday Night Live. So his departure is different in that sense of like, it's not that you can't replace his talent. You just can't replace like the story and just kind of like the connection and like the backbone of what made him a part of SNL. That's going to be really hard to replace.
Well, I think too that you can't I mean, he's created a character that people can't, that people just won't emulate because it seems so genuine. That he's the guy who probably got picked on in high school. He laughs about being picked on in high school. He, all these things. And he dated Ariana Grande. He's now dating Kim. Like in a lot of ways, he's the American dream.
Yeah. One last shout out I want to give out because I think 5 people left the show. Do you know? Have you ever heard of 80 Bryant?
No.
She's a brunette that's on the show. I just want to shout her out because she is somebody who she's not a star on the show, but she is just one of those people that is always those skits where like you need 5 people to sit in the room and they drop the one-liner. And 80 Bryant's leaving the show after a long tenure, and she is fantastic as well. So anybody who's an SNL fan, they know who 80 Bryant is. And that's a big loss for him as well. So this is probably the biggest shakeup SNL has had in quite some time. They're losing a lot of their punch.
Huh.
Yep.
All right, do we want to talk hockey before we go?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, Edmonton won.
And thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Is that good?
That's good. That's good. Now, tonight's not a big hockey night. It's tomorrow, but tonight, big NBA game. So, we're getting there.
Yeah, no, we're getting there. I think the Warriors are going to win it all. I think that's where it's headed.
They seem a little warm right now. Yes, they do.
Oh, yeah. They're going to be they're set for the next, 10 years. They're not.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this. I don't know if you care. Brett Crosley, who's one of our writers here, is a big Oakland A's fan. I was talking about it. Brett was just in Vegas. He's a Vegas hockey fan of the Knights, and he said it is basically set now. And I don't know what he knows, if he's just purely speculating that the Oakland A's will end up in Vegas, just like the Raiders did, and because they're not drawing anyone in Oakland,
sure.
And apparently, when I guess the hockey team's doing great, the Raiders are doing phenomenally well, and I know baseball's 81 games and it's different, but it's still they when you just look, there's no way they'll do as bad, and there's that natural connection of like if you rooted for the Oakland Raiders and the Oakland A's, now you can root for the Vegas Raiders and the Vegas A's, and it's just kind of like a surrogate home. So,
two interesting things there. I don't associate Oakland with the Athletics. I associate the Athletics with Oakland. So I'm curious if they'll keep the name.
Oh, they used to be the Philadelphia A's. I think they were the Kansas City A's once upon a time. I mean, the Raiders did, and they're like,
but that's
it's
different.
Like Oakland,
but that's
like
that's
Oakland
the point I'm
Root.
making. That's the point I'm making though. Is like the Raiders are you could put the Raiders in Quebec and like the Raider logo, the silver and black. Like the Raiders are the Raiders. Like I don't associate. To me, it's the Oakland baseball team. I don't necessarily associate the Athletics being like the key thing.
That is interesting.
So the point I'm making is if we do go to Vegas, I wouldn't be shocked if they are not the Athletics.
It's interesting. Could you mention, because baseball teams don't move very often. They move less than probably. But when Montreal moved to, and it's a modern thing because you go through and you look like, why is it the Utah Jazz? Well, they were in New Orleans. The New Orleans Jazz made total sense and they moved. Why the Los Angeles Lakers? Well, they were the Minneapolis Lakers and it was the land of 10,000 lakes. So there's a lot of those, but then the modern era of whether it's the Tennessee Titans or the Baltimore Ravens or the Washington Nationals, or these teams move and they want their own identity. They want to kind of start from scratch. All the ones that move. Go ahead. I was going to say the Dallas Stars. I can't think of the last team that moved other than the Raiders, who went from Oakland to LA back to Oakland and now to Las Vegas. I guess the Cardinals have in football, or not the Cardinals. Well, the Rams and the Cardinals. So yeah, that would be interesting. As I'm just spitballing out loud, you might be right. They may go with with a new identity.
You also have the issue that the hottest team in Las Vegas is the Las Vegas Aces, the WNBA team. So you already have a team that the letter A is what they represent.
When you say hottest, you mean of physical attraction or of people like watching?
They might be the best franchise in the WNBA.
If you would have said, where do the Aces play? I would have not. Never heard.
The Las Vegas Aces are loaded. I don't know if they've ever been bad. They've only been around for, I think, 3 or 4 years, but they are like in the finals, like contention every year. They're loaded.
Huh. So now the next question would be, does an NBA team end up in Vegas?
Yes. It's Vegas and Seattle.
Oh, and Sacramento.
It's Vegas and Seattle, and they're going to be it's going to be the Vegas Kings and it's going to be the Seattle Supersonics, and the league will go to 32. I would if I could bet on it in Vegas, see what I did there? If I could bet on it in Vegas, I would say by 2025 the NBA will have 32 teams, Vegas Kings, Seattle Supersonics.
Okay. Yep,
that's like a done. You can take that one to the bank. That is happening.
Okay, I will.
All right. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all your local news.
That's it. I'll see you.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see you tomorrow. Hopefully, possibly Jamie Flick this week. Dylan Rockoff on Thursday. We have Joe Smith coming on Friday. Going to do some Top Gun and some 80s movies. I'm going to have a field day on Friday making fun of you two about 80s movies. So I'm excited for that.
I would just warn you ahead of time. You're going to sound stupid. So don't. It is the high point of Western civilization, and do not mock it.
We'll see you guys tomorrow.